Hello and welcome to Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legalbytes merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. Well, hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is. I hope you are having a good Thursday. I had to remind myself today's Thursday. So anyway, we've got day one today of the trial of New Mexico versus Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. This is the first Rust case or Rust shooting trial. It's interesting that Court TV is calling it the Alec Baldwin film trial. Like they're really trying to still use his name for the clicks, which is just interesting. But we're always going for notoriety. We're always trying to gather in some audiences. So I'm not gonna be angry about the grift, I guess you could say. But here's someone who is pretty much never angry. I'm gonna bring him on. Hey, Nate, how's it going?
What's going on? How you doing?
Good. I'm so happy to have you here. I know you said you've only got like 15 minutes to hang out here, but it's good to have you here while we're waiting on the courtroom feed. I'll show you guys just so that I'm not making things up. We are still waiting on it. It sounded like there was a little bit of a hearing beforehand. I just caught the very end of it. I didn't even know what they were covering. But I know that they were like, it sounded like they were like, all right, now we'll bring in the jury. And it's been like 30 minutes since then. So,
all right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, they finished jury selection, so they're probably doing opening statements. They're probably just doing all
Yes.
because a lot of times in a trial, you got to get everything kind of set up before, do we have enough time to do opening statements? How long do you think you'll need counselor? We got lunch.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that stuff. And then whether you can, because you may be able to get a first witness in the day too, if
Yes.
opening statements. So I understand that type of house cleaning scenario,
Yeah, for sure. So I did see reporting that they swore in 16 jurors. 4 of them are alternates. So we've got a full 12 here for this jury. And yeah, they actually swore them in yesterday. I mean, I think they started jury selection in like the afternoon yesterday. So I was actually kind of surprised, that they were able to seat a jury so quickly. But I didn't catch any sort of details about what that process was like. So I don't know what kind of questions they asked, but I mean, evidently they found enough people that have not been following this case. So that's good.
And plus you're talking about a smaller community too. Because this is not like New York. You got 8 million people. You got to, you can bring in thousands of people. So it's a small jury pool. So I'm thinking you'll get a lot of, it's just, you just don't have that many people to go through. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is an interesting case though. I mean, I referred to this as a companion case in my primer video that I put out yesterday on this. But this is a companion case to the Alec Baldwin case. That's the one that like really everybody's been mostly talking about because Alec Baldwin, he's been like an A-list star for how many decades now at this point. It's easy to talk about him, but this one's a very important case because we're talking about the armorer here. It's literally in her job description to maintain safety and good maintenance of all of the weapons on set. And obviously things went wrong here. So one of the big things that's going to come up is of course the question of where did the live rounds come from? The two sides are going to fight really hard on this. I'm really, really interested to hear the evidence from both sides as to what's gonna what evidence is there that really is gonna which way is that gonna fall?
You know what? I think there are a couple of things here. I and again, this is just my opinion. I think Hannah Gutierrez, she should have pled. She's going down for sure. You know, her her gun, her ammo, her it's her, right? So we're not talking about if she's going to be found guilty. It's just kind of like what's going to be the level of her liability. I think it is.
Yeah.
I think Alec Baldwin is someone you can, and on top of that, you already have the AD who pled. That's the person she handed the gun,
Yes.
and he's pled guilty already. So I think
And
she's
he's
domino to fall.
And he's also on both sides witness lists. I saw when I was browsing through the filings in recent weeks. I saw that both sides listed him as a witness. So expect him to testify. Don't expect Alec Baldwin to testify. He still has his trial. He can invoke the fifth. So like, no one's expecting him to testify here. I mean, he might not even testify in his own trial.
Yeah.
But David Hall, on the other hand, doesn't have any criminality to be at risk for because he already pled
He's already pled
guilty to his charges. So that is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting for sorry, I'm like I don't know if you know this, but you can do hand signals and like all kinds of crazy things can happen on a Mac.
Cool.
So I happen to like
happening for me.
do you have are you on a Mac?
Yeah, I'm on a Mac.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I this happened randomly during a members only stream that I like had like two fingers up because I was trying to do the number 2, and then like it all of a sudden like balloons popped up.
Oh,
and I was
cool!
Like, what is happening? Cool. I was like, what's going on? I was very confused.
Celebration.
Yeah. So there's like all kinds of things that you can do. So I just so I have to like be mindful of that because I guess I do a lot of gestures on live streams.
Yeah, you know me. I'm a wild man on live streams. If you guys come watch my live streams, I'm all over the place. My hands, I lose control of my hands and my head. I'm like, oh my god! So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And here's a good point to keep in mind, Shireen, one of our mods. We like opinions in this chat, but also be friendly and kind. That's a really great point. This is a case that can very easily get political. We don't really talk politics that much on this channel. So talking about policies and things like that, that's fine. But I mean, I don't know, whatever, it's fine. People can give their opinions. When opinions are differing, totally fine. We welcome all different opinions, all different viewpoints. Just be respectful of one another. That's all I ask.
Yeah, and I think the political aspect of this isn't really that. It's a two-way argument, he's an anti-2A, this, that type of thing. So I don't really think the politics are really, and you're talking about really Democrats v. Democrats because the prosecutor's a Democrat, Alec Baldwin's a Democrat. So yeah. I think the political aspect to this is low, but I do think it's a fascinating understated because I think if you're in LA or in California, I don't think this case gets brought. Because I think there, like when you get SAG come out and say what he did, he shouldn't be held responsible and that type of thing. But then
I don't know that that's true though, because the doesn't the Screen Actors Guild have their own guidelines on how actors are supposed to handle a firearm, and it's like the same as any other firearm on any other range. I remember coming across that. I think it was SAG that had like those kind of guidelines.
But SAG came out with a statement supporting Alec Baldwin 100%.
Oh, did they?
Saying that this prosecution wasn't warranted and that he's, essentially not liable and all that stuff. They fully backed him 110%. But and I think, if that's the case, then I think it depends on where you're at. Because I think here, if you're in most places, if you're on a movie set or at a gun range or whatever, everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, supposed to treat guns the same, supposed to treat live ammo the same. But it seems like when you're in Hollywood, there's an expectation that you have people who are supposed to protect you from that liability, and that's where the armor comes in and the AD comes in. So I think that's the difference between if they did it in Hollywood versus if you're doing it in New Mexico.
That's fair. I mean, and anytime you're going to be dealing with local culture, local biases and things for or against different types of people, there could very well be an anti-Hollywood bias in New Mexico in Santa Fe County. That's always a possibility. And that obviously wouldn't exist in Los Angeles. where people are used to. I mean, it is Hollywood, right? But yeah, I think you're probably right. This wouldn't have been brought in Los Angeles if that's where it had happened. So, but I mean, I don't know. Then another aspect here that's going to be very, very interesting is the prosecution's really going to try to pin her alcohol and drug use. It seems like there's a lot of evidence of her using it in her off hours. And even with the presence of live rounds in her hotel room, having drugs and alcohol present there while having live rounds in her hotel room. But I don't know if they have enough to really nab her at work. Maybe the biggest piece that they have could potentially be the evidence tampering charge, which is she handed off, I guess, allegedly a bag of cocaine to a friend or to an acquaintance. I think that day or something along those lines. Like during the investigation, she like handed off like, uh-oh, like, here you go, take this for me. And I don't know if that was on set or if that was afterwards when they were at the hotel or where and when that was. That's going to make a really big difference in the case, in my opinion. So, but I mean, if there's evidence of her, being impaired by drugs or alcohol, really by any amount while working, I think they're going to have an easy case for criminal negligence.
Yes. I think any drugs, but I also think I don't know, because I don't know. I think that's a cherry on top, if you know what I mean. Like I think they got her. To be fair, I think her lawyers are leading her down the plank, right? There's no way that she can't. If she's found not guilty, then essentially involuntary manslaughter should be thrown out.
One.
Yeah.
Let's just go.
And here she is. She definitely looks like she has really toned down her look. She looks much more conservative than like the day she was arrested. This is a great look for a criminal defendant. It's very neat. It's conservative. It's simple. And that's good.
She's
so courtroom fashion. There's my first thoughts.
But what about her attorney right next to her? What is she wearing?
Okay, see, that's a good question. I have a feeling that's probably a paralegal or probably because there's two lead attorneys here. There's Bullion and I can't remember the other guy's name. It's the two. Oh God, see, look at this with the balloons. I'm like two. There's two people and then balloons come up. See, there it goes again. Okay, that may have been a paralegal or some kind of a.
All right, we're on the record.
And here's the judge. So far, I really like this judge, by the way.
So now, just so everybody understands too, Jeopardy is attached now since the jury sworn
on the
in.
record.
So it's double Jeopardy.
What they cannot show, and it's the first video. Correct. Okay. Where's Court TV? Anybody, a representative that I can focus on? All right. So do you have any? Do you have any questions? Okay.
She is no nonsense.
Yeah, but
this is like so chill too. At the same time, I love
Hannah,
it.
right?
This is Grace from Grace.
Oh, Grace.
But
Okay,
she
Grace.
knows remember
we talked.
Watching this.
Yes.
Okay, so this is one of those videos that we don't want to show. So it's going to be her first witness, and it'll be the first exhibit.
First exhibit, first witness. That's why we have multiple cameras, so we'll show anything but that video.
And not the jurors.
Yes, of course, not the jurors.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we're going to call in the
So
jurors.
is that going to be the video of Halyna Hutchins' death? Do you
I
think?
don't know. Maybe it might.
Just because. Thank you so much for the super chat. I just want to take this time to thank the ADs, the prop departments, the producers, and all my film family for never putting me in any of these positions. The film should have been shut down. Damn.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well,
yeah.
this is a nice dry run for Alec Baldwin, because when Alec Baldwin's that's going to be the trial, but this is this is
because Alec Baldwin gets to have a good peek into the prosecution's strategy for what they plan to do.
Too. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is, there's a lot that is going to be really tested out for Alec Baldwin's team. He's really benefiting by and quite a bit of time too. I mean, his trial is maybe going to go off in summer, so they've got months to figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah. I think it's going to be harder for them to get Alec, but I think she's toast. I think she's gone.
She might be. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll bet you $100 that I think she's guilty verdict, or she's going to plead. There's no way. There's no way. She's essentially to the involuntary murder.
Yeah, or involuntary manslaughter.
I mean, yeah, involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah.
We're just looking at her. Even though I will say this though, it does make a difference when you're in court how you look, because
Yes.
I've sat there during jury selection, and one of the jurors said the guy just looks guilty. The guy happened to be a gang member, but he's got tattoos everywhere and all that sort of stuff. And the guy was like, I can't be impartial because he looks guilty to me, So instead of putting him in a suit, because even though we try to pretend we don't have those internal biases, we do. If she comes in here with crazy hair and all that stuff, you're like, oh, but now she comes in looking normal. You're like, all right,
And that's where also, like, we're talking about, like, it could be totally fine for her usual life and what she normally wants to wear. And when she's going about her everyday life, that's fine. Wear whatever you want. I don't care. But it's just what's appropriate for court and what is the jury going to judge you for, properly or improperly. Humans are humans nonetheless, and everybody's got their own opinions that they bring into the courtroom. Even though we all like to think that we're pretty neutral people, everybody's got their opinions on these things. And I think that this look so far, this is great. This is a great look. She looks
All right,
good.
may be seated. All right, the matter I'm calling is State of New Mexico versus Hannah Gutierrez,
Here we go.
D101CR 2023-40. Parties state their name.
Good morning, Your Honor. Jason Lewis and Karen Morrissey on behalf of the State of New Mexico. Good morning, Your Honor. Jason Bowles, Carmela Cisneros, and Todd William are here for Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, who is present.
All right, thank you very much.
okay. So those
All right, jurors. So I first of all thank you for your patience. As they say, accidents happen.
That's the prosecutor who was
thank you.
screaming
All
at me
right,
over the
so
phone.
I'm going to give you an
gotta tell
explanation
the-
of trial
We
procedure.
talk
Can you
about
all
that
hear
later
me
when
okay?
there's a break, if you're around.
And I already swore you in yesterday, okay? So
Sandy, thank you so much for gifting
George
10
go?
Legalbytes memberships.
just gonna tell
So
you
kind and
met my
generous of
bailiff.
you.
There he is. Okay,
Ooh, 10
yeah,
memberships.
do we need
Yeah. So Arta Rissanen, Carolyn
Wait.
V, Shannon G, David Puff, Dionysia Jaclau, Melissa Simok, Diane M, Atea,
Hello.
and Melanie. You've all been gifted a membership by Sandy. So thank you so much, Sandy. Yeah, Pamela C. I don't know. I think she does look scared. She's
scared.
hiding. She's hiding it well. She's hiding it well, but she looks like she's maybe hasn't eaten today.
She's looking
You know
at
what I mean?
looking at what,
Ready?
a couple of years
Okay.
in prison right now.
Okay, so I called the case. So this is a criminal case commenced by the state charging the defendant with a third amended criminal information. I will read this to you to remind you of what the charges are. It sounds formal. Count 1, involuntary manslaughter. In that on or about October 21, 2021, in Santa Fe County, New Mexico, at the Bonanza Creek Ranch, located at 545 Bonanza Creek Road, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87508. The above named defendant did cause the death of Halyna Hutchins, committed in the commission of an unlawful act, to wit, negligent use of a deadly weapon. In the alternative, count 1, involuntary manslaughter. In that on or about October 21, 2021, in Santa Fe County, New Mexico, at the Bonanza Creek Ranch, located at 545 Bonanza Creek Road, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87508. The above named defendant did cause the death of Halyna Hutchins, committed in the commission of a lawful act which might produce death in an unlawful manner or without due caution or circumspection. Count 2, tampering with evidence. And that on or about October 21, 2021, in Santa Fe County, New Mexico,
Eric, good to see
the
you.
above named defendant did transfer narcotics
DM.
to another person with the intent to prevent the apprehension, prosecution, or conviction of herself. Thank you. All right. So remember that Ms. Hannah Gutierrez is presumed innocent. The burden is on the state to prove guilt beyond a
Yep.
reasonable doubt. I have some instructions to give you. These are instructions that you'll follow throughout the trial. First of all, one of the most important is all of you must pay close attention to the evidence. After you've read all of the evidence, I will read the final instructions of law to you. You will also receive a written copy of all instructions. You must follow the final instructions in deciding the case. Again, the trial is expected to last possibly through May 8th. And we're here every day except the weekends, 8:30 to 5, okay? We'll take a morning break. We'll take a lunch break. We'll take an afternoon break.
Nice.
Let's see. Please report to where
Thanks
you've
so much,
reported
Sandy.
today
Like and subscribe,
at
guys.
8:30 so we can start.
And thanks for being
If
a
you
member
know you
for
might
so
be
long,
late for
Sandy.
some reason, please leave early. Do not come into the courtroom unless you are accompanied by George, my bailiff. You may take water into the courtroom with you, but no hot liquid or coffee. We stand up out of respect for you because you are the ultimate decision makers as to the facts in this particular case. So when you come into court, go ahead, be seated, and after all of you are seated, we will be seated. It is so important to hear. Do not miss one word. Raise your hand, don't wait, don't be shy, okay? This is a public proceeding, so people may go in and
You
out.
meant March
You may
8th,
find
not
yourself
May 8th.
looking at who is going in and
The-
out. But after a while, I think you'll get used to it.
March 7th, 8th.
However, if there is anything distracting you
It's not
from
going to be
being
like a
able to
2-month-long
listen
trial.
and be involved in
3
the
months.
case, please tell George and he'll let me know. Really can't do anything about the temperature. So, as I said, layers. You are allowed but not required to take notes during trial. George will hand you each a notepad and a pen or pencil. Please put your name on the front of the page, on the front of the pad, and then take notes beginning on the second page. On breaks, leave them on your chair or follow what George says, leave or take back to the jury room. He'll collect them at the end of the day, and in the morning he'll return them. Please don't worry about your notes being read by anyone. They're locked up at night, and then at the end of the trial, they're shredded immediately, okay? Don't let your notes take the place of your independent memory of the evidence. When taking notes, please don't forget to pay close attention to the witnesses during their testimony because it will help you assess their appearance, behavior, memory, and whatever else bears on their
Nate, Manny
credibility.
Fabani wanted to say that you're a right.
Let's go through the order of trial for any of you that have not been through a criminal trial. A criminal trial generally begins with the lawyers telling you what they expect the evidence to show. This is called opening statements. These statements made by the lawyers during the course of trial can be of considerable assistance to you in understanding the evidence as it is presented at trial. Statements of the lawyers, however, are not themselves evidence. The evidence will be the testimony of the witnesses, exhibits, and any facts agreed to by the parties. After you have heard all of the evidence, I will then give you final instructions on the law. The lawyers will argue the case, that's called closing argument, and then you will retire to the jury room to arrive at a verdict.
Retire.
It is my duty to decide what evidence you may consider. Your job is to find and determine the facts in this case, which you must do solely upon the evidence received here in court. It is the duty of the lawyer to object to questions, testimony, or exhibits the lawyer believes may not be proper, and you must not hold such objection against the objecting party. I will sustain objections if the question or evidence sought is improper for you to consider. If I sustain an objection to evidence, you must not consider such evidence, nor may you consider any evidence that I have told you to disregard. By itself, a question is not evidence. You must not speculate about what would be the answer to a question that I rule cannot be answered. It is for you to decide whether the witnesses know what they are talking about and whether they are being truthful. You may give the testimony of any witness whatever weight you believe it merits. You may take into account, among other things, the witness's ability and opportunities to observe, memory, manner, or any bias or prejudice that the witness may have, and the reasonableness of the testimony considered in light of all of the evidence in the case. No ruling, gesture, or comment I make during the course of the trial should influence your decision in this case. At times, I may ask questions of witnesses. If I do, such questions do not in any way indicate my opinion about the facts or indicate the weight I feel you should give to the testimony of the witness. Questions by jurors. Ordinarily, the attorneys will develop all pertinent evidence. It is the exception rather than the rule that an individual juror will have an unanswered question after all of the evidence is presented. However, if you feel an important question has not been asked or answered, write it down on a piece of your note paper and give it to George before the witness leaves the stand.
That's cool. I've never
I will
actually
decide
watched
whether
one
or
of these
when your
trials
question will be
where the
asked.
witnesses can ask
Rules of
questions.
evidence or other considerations apply to questions you submit and may prevent the question from being asked. If the question is not asked, please do not give it any further consideration, do not discuss it with the other jurors, and please do not hold it against either side that you did not get an answer. Conduct of jurors. You must again decide the case solely upon the evidence received in court. You must not consider anything you may have read or heard about the case outside the courtroom. During the trial and your deliberations, you must avoid news accounts of the trial, whether they be on radio, television, the internet, or in a newspaper or other written publication. You must not visit the scene of the incident on your own. You cannot make experiments with reference to this
Investigating.
case. You cannot Google anything about this case, do any research about the subject matter of the case.
Don't go on your own down your own rabbit hole.
And that would include anything regarding this,
Yeah, like those damn YouTube
pre or
channels.
current. If an exhibit is, until you retire, this is very important, until you retire to deliberate the case. And that means after closing argument when you've received all the evidence. You must not discuss this case or the evidence with anyone, even with each other. So as I said yesterday, I'm sorry to harp, but this is so important. What I said yesterday was you cannot, while you're in that jury deliberation room, that is not a time for you to discuss the case while you're sitting around. No, it's, as I said, after all of the evidence, that'll be down the line, March 8th, that's, and we send you off to deliberate. That's when you can discuss the case, when you're in deliberations, okay? Let's see. If an exhibit is admitted in evidence, you should examine it yourself and not talk about it with other jurors until you retire to deliberate. It is important that you keep an open mind and not decide any part of the case until the entire case has been completed and submitted to you.
Mm-hmm.
Your special responsibility as jurors demands that throughout this trial, you exercise your judgment impartially and without regard to any sympathy, bias, or prejudice. To minimize the risk of accidentally overhearing something that is not evidence in this case, please continue to wear the jurors' badges while in and around the courthouse. If someone happens to discuss the case in your presence, report that fact to George immediately. Although it is natural to visit with people you meet, please do not talk with any of the attorneys, parties, witnesses, or spectators either in or out of the courtroom. If you meet in the hallways or elevators or elsewhere, there is nothing wrong with saying a good morning or a good afternoon, but your conversation should end there. If the attorneys, parties, and witnesses do not greet you outside of the courtroom or avoid riding in the same elevator with you, they are not being rude. They are just carefully observing this rule.
It's
And they
because you
definitely
smell.
wanted me to tell you that so that you don't think they're being rude. Okay. All right. So we'll do the exclusion rule.
Yes, Your Honor.
Scout
All right,
Bradley,
and
thanks so much
we
for
will
this.
begin the
Nate and
the
Legalbytes
evidence,
together.
right?
Can my day get
Not
any
the
better?
evidence.
You're a poet, don't you know it? And also Lawn Lumber. Thanks for the super chat,
Hey,
man.
Rob.
How's my favorite judge doing? Have the lawyers started screaming at each other yet? Not on camera.
Nah.
I don't know. Maybe we'll see some spice because this special prosecutor, the female special prosecutor, she is spicy. And I know Rob knows what I'm talking about. Especially in the latest hearing. I know Emily streamed the hearing, and she's a spicy one. She's definitely a spicy one, but I would anticipate that she's going to reserve that for when the jury is not in the room, because I don't know, people may or may not take to it. But yeah, this judge is awesome. I anticipate she's going to run a tight ship. Well, relatively tight. Timing wise, court started a little bit late. But this judge is she's
I've I don't know. I lost you. I don't know if anybody else lost you.
hang on. What is going on?
Okay,
here?
I hear that. It sounds like it's going through your phone.
Oh, through my phone?
Well,
Yeah,
you're not talking through your mic. I can hear you now, but it doesn't sound like it's coming through your mic.
Oh, it's through my AirPods. Hang on. I don't know, man.
All right, there you go. You're back. You're back.
Yeah, I got a notification that like it got unplugged somehow, but I hadn't touched anything. This mic, man.
Well,
But anyway, yeah.
Well, unfortunately,
Sorry, go ahead.
I have to go because I promised
Gotta
on
go.
civil law
And
that I
have
would
poker
jump into
faces,
history and say
but
hi.
I said May 8th.
So I'm going to jump over
I meant
there,
March 8th.
and then I have some other stuff I have to do at 11. So I wish I could watch this, but I'll probably
Panic
jump back
there,
in a
but
little later
nobody-
because I'm
nobody's
assuming it's
sure
going to be
they're
going on for a while.
Panic.
So
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
so
you're
chat-
free to come back
March
in.
8th. Okay.
Thanks
now,
so much for joining, Nate.
anytime, and I will see you guys
remind
later.
you will hear this. It will
See you,
sound.
Nate.
There's going to be two things that sound like a broken record, and one is every time we take a break or whatever, do not talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Very important. The other thing is because we are doing court
Wait,
TV.
no, that's way too
I don't
big.
know if you all know that. And by the way, they're not filming you. They're not allowed to film you. So don't worry about that. And then because you're wearing your juror badges, they will know to leave you alone in and around the courthouse and lunch and everything, whatever. Okay. Now, I will be saying a lot that the witnesses may not be watching the live stream court TV. That's important to so that they're not hearing the evidence. That's what they just asked me to do. So that will come whenever I think of it, because as they pointed out, a witness may get on the live stream and have missed my direction, although they should know it anyway. Okay. All right, so I did say we'll start the evidence, but that's actually wrong. We're going to start with opening statement, which is
Yes, of
not
course.
evidence. Okay, thank you.
Pamela C., are you going to cover the whole trial? Yes, and it's only going to be like 2 weeks. It doesn't go till May. Will Baldwin testify? No, not in this trial, for sure not.
Ladies and gentlemen,
What makes
Your
the
Honor,
prosecutor special? She's
counselors.
not part of the DA's office, but she's been
My name
assigned just
is
for this
Jason
case.
Lewis, and I know that we were introduced briefly yesterday during the jury selection process. I wanted
we
to
go.
introduce myself again. My co-counsel is Carrie Morrissey, who most of you spoke to at least in some to some degree yesterday. Also at counsel table is Shad Bowe. He is our IT specialist, and Corporal Alexander Hancock. She is what's called our case agent, and she is a witness who you will be hearing from later, maybe later today, if not certainly by tomorrow. As the judge mentioned earlier, it is Ms. Morrissey's and my responsibility to prove to your all's satisfaction that Ms. Gutierrez committed the two crimes with which she's been charged beyond a reasonable doubt. The two crimes she's been charged with are involuntary manslaughter and tampering with evidence. This morning, I hope to give you a roadmap of what we intend to introduce throughout the trial. And although the statements that I'm making this morning aren't evidence and you can't consider what I'm saying for purposes of your deliberations,
hey, Ian, good to see you.
I hope to give you a preview of what the evidence is about, what witnesses you're going to be hearing from, and again, kind of highlight some of the key pieces of evidence that we think we're going to be showing you throughout the trial. But most importantly, what we want to do is give you the information that you need to answer two key questions. The first being, what are the events that happened on the set of Rust that led to the death of Halyna Hutchins? And the second question is, how did live ammunition end up on the set of the movie? As to both questions, we believe that it was the negligent acts and failures of the defendant, Ms. Gutierrez, that resulted in both the acts that contributed to Ms. Hutchins' death and to the live rounds being brought onto the set. A bit later on, I'm going to explain to you exactly how we believe that happened. Give me just a minute.
It's a little bit of a rough start, in my opinion.
I'm going to put some images up on the screen for you guys, but there's a little process we have to go through to get that going.
Set that up before you start, man. He introduced the tech guy. Maybe the tech guy could have helped out before he started or while he started. Ay, what a rough start. Flash Fan 85. Hey, favorite law tuber wanted to come and show
Ladies and
support.
gentlemen,
Thanks so much,
this
man.
is Halyna Hutchins.
There we go.
This is the victim in the case that we're here to deal with this morning. Miss Hutchins was born in Ukraine on April 9th, 1979. She was married. Her husband's name is Matthew, and she has one son who was 9 years old at the time of her death. As a child, Miss Hutchins lived on a Russian military base located in the Arctic. She took an early and keen interest in film and journalism. She studied both economics and journalism at the Kiev National University, where she received a degree in international journalism. Miss Hutchins met her husband, Matthew, when she was working in the United States in Los Angeles, California. They hit it off so well that they eventually got married. And when Miss Hutchins moved and immigrated into the United States, she continued her education, and she eventually earned a master's degree in 2015 from the American Film Institute Conservatory. While in Los Angeles, Miss Hutchins transitioned into the film and television industry, working as a cinematographer. This was a job that she loved and she had a great passion for. For those of you, oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know, just speak up.
Okay, I apologize. My microphone has been off this whole time and I didn't know.
Oh, God.
For those of you who may not know, a cinematographer is a person who works behind the scenes on a film, and the cinematographer is responsible for creating the overall vision of the film. In very basic terms, the cinematographer decides how the movie will be lit and colored and how the final footage will appear on the screen when you watch the movie. And in fact, Miss Hutchins was working as a cinematographer for the movie Rust, which when she was tragically shot and killed on October 21st, 2021. By all accounts, from the folks who knew her and worked with her, and many of those you will be hearing from, she was a gifted and talented artist, but above all, she was a loving wife and mother. And like Miss Hutchins, the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, was also a behind-the-scenes member of the Rust crew. Ms. Gutierrez was hired to perform a dual role on the movie. She was hired to be both an armorer and a props assistant. As a props assistant, it was Ms. Gutierrez's primary duty to essentially go out and source and bring back to the film set everything that the actors need to touch as part of making
Rob,
the movie.
this is
So, for
so
example,
true.
if they're doing
Like, I
a
don't feel
kitchen
any
scene,
passion behind this,
then
any
Ms.
feeling, any
Gutierrez would
emotion.
have gone out,
This is
purchased
a woman who
plates,
died.
cups, glasses,
Like, it should be
forks,
pretty
all of that
easy
sort
to
of
come
stuff.
up with it. She's the
And then
mom,
those
she's the
would have been
husband.
incorporated into the set. Ms. Gutierrez's other role was as the movie's armorer. And it's that role that really has brought us here today. The armor has a few key responsibilities. The first responsibility is to source and bring to the set all of the firearms that are going to be used as part of the movie. So for a modern movie, that may have required her to purchase or obtain machine guns, semi-automatic handguns, long rifles, and that sort of thing. But for a Western like Rust, the armor would have to source weapons that were in use at the time so that the movie looks more authentic. And so that would include finding old-looking revolvers and shotguns and things of that nature.
Mary Beth Robeson.
I've just put up a photo. This is the firearm that Mr. Baldwin was using in this movie. This is also the firearm that was used in the incident that resulted in the death of Ms. Hutchins. One of the things that I think is important for you all to understand is that throughout this trial, we all may refer to these type of firearms as prop guns, but make no mistake, they are legitimate firearms. If you put a bullet,
yes and yes,
a live bullet
I think.
inside of these guns, they will fire. So we sometimes refer to them as prop weapons, but they are absolutely capable of causing a projectile to fly out of the barrel. The other thing that it's important for you all to know is that although this particular weapon looks old, it is actually a brand new gun.
This is getting physically painful for me.
This gun was purchased directly from the manufacturer for the purpose of being used in this movie. And although it looks old, it's not a gun that has had hundreds or thousands of rounds put through it. It was a brand new and perfectly functioning gun when it arrived on the set. The second thing that the armorer is responsible for is sourcing and purchasing blank and dummy ammunition. You're going to be hearing a lot throughout this trial about the differences between live ammunition, blank ammunition, dummy ammunition. So I'm just going to kind of give you a 10,000-foot overview of what this stuff is. The image that's on your screen right now is what's called a blank round. A blank round is actually pretty easy to distinguish because it has that crimped end where normally a bullet would be.
This would be correct, Vadre. That's a
the
correct
reason
assessment.
that blanks are used in the movie is because when it's in the gun and an actor pulls a trigger, there is enough gunpowder inside of that blank to cause a pop and have a cloud of smoke come out from the gun, but it doesn't have a projectile that shoots through
This is not even
the
in a
barrel
narrative
of the
form
gun.
at this point.
So these are
He's
a
not telling
type
a
of
story. This is one of
round
your-
that is used frequently on the movie sets, especially.
Hang on. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm pausing it because it's like opening statements and closing arguments are the only opportunities basically for the attorneys to be able to talk directly to the jurors and to give them their framework, give them like the way in which to organize all of the information that is going to be coming their way, that's going to be flying at them out of order because it's coming in through live witnesses. So it's like, this is your best shot to set up the framework so that they can organize that information that's coming at them. Right now, he's just throwing the information at them, not in a narrative format, not with any kind of organization, so that people are just like, okay, there's a gun, she's an armorer, she's a cinematographer. It's just like this is terrible. This is horrible, in my opinion. Like, tell it in a story. There is a story. So many people have been telling this story for the last 2 years. It's so frustrating to watch. Okay, I'm gonna get off my soapbox here, and we're gonna continue playing. But I am just so frustrated right now.
Especially whenever they want to make it look like the actor is actually firing a weapon. The second type of round that is used on the sets are what's called dummy rounds. And these are a different story.
This is
Dummies
not-
look exactly like real bullets. As you can tell from kind of that main image there, although this evidence dummy round has some writing on it, you wouldn't be able to distinguish that from a live bullet if you were just looking at it with your eyes. And because these dummy rounds are designed to look exactly like live ammunition, every round has to be thoroughly checked before it is put inside of one of these firearms. Aside from sourcing firearms, blanks, and dummies for the movie, the next major function that Hannah was required to do on the movie set is that she was required to check every single one of these rounds to make sure that it's the appropriate blank or dummy and not live ammunition before it gets inserted into the gun. And there are two primary ways that an armorer or anybody who's familiar with this can check to make sure that a round is a dummy round. The first thing they can do is shake it. And if you'll see in that on the lower right-hand side, I've got a photograph for you there of a plastic container that's got 3 BBs in it. Those BBs are inside of that dummy round so that whenever you shake it, you can audibly hear that it's making a noise. And that way you know it's a dummy round. Sometimes they have a little spring in there rather than these bullets, but they always have some sort of noisemaker in there. The other way to distinguish a dummy from a real live bullet is in that top right photograph, and you'll see that that cartridge has a hole drilled into the side of the casing. That's the second way that you can distinguish a dummy round from a live round. And then we have, not to overcomplicate things, but I think it's important that you know this, we also have some dummy rounds that are missing what's called the primer. Normally on a live cartridge, there's an explosive element that is inside of that center portion that whenever the hammer of the gun hits that primer, it causes a small spark
yes.
that then ignites
Leave this
the
part
rest
to the
of the
experts to get
gunpowder
into
in the
these kind of
bullet
details.
and causes
He's lost in the weeds.
the
Completely
projectile
lost in the weeds.
to be expelled.
A Scout and a Bradley death
So
by
dummy
PowerPoint time
rounds,
is correct.
As you can see, they do look an awful lot like live ammunition, but there are ways, if you are careful, that you can distinguish a dummy round from a live round. The next major function of the armorer is to check the firearm before it is brought onto the set. And there's a very specific process that is used for this. When it's time for a firearm to be used, the armorer is required to present the firearm to the first assistant director to double check that only dummy rounds are inside the gun. And the armorer is also supposed to offer the actor who is receiving the gun the opportunity to also have the gun inspected in front of them. Unfortunately, in this case, Ms. Gutierrez did not always adhere to these safety procedures, and you're going to hear from several witnesses who will testify that she often rushed through this critical step and sometimes she skipped this check altogether. So let's turn to what happened on October 21st, 2021.
Oh.
The cast and crew of the Rust film were out at the Bonanza Creek Ranch, which is a ranch located just outside the city limits of Santa Fe. It's several thousand acres large, and it has an Old West style town that's built there, and often movies are filmed there. And I've got an example photo here just to kind of give you an idea of what the set looks like. It's nothing particularly fancy. It's just an Old West looking town. Uh, part of the set, and this is located a little bit a ways from the town itself, is this church. And it was at this church that the incident resulting in Miss Hutchins' death occurred. The evidence is going to show that on October 21st, it was a fairly chaotic day on the set of the movie. The evening before, a group of camera operators who had some concerns about various safety issues on set sent an email to the production team indicating that they were going to be quitting. And so the next day, in response to this notice, the producers decided to push ahead with filming anyway, and they decided to use less camera equipment than what was normally used, and they tried to just improvise and make do with what they had. Filming on the morning of the 21st was largely uneventful. The cast and crew filmed several scenes without any particular incidents occurring. Leading up to the lunch hour, a small group of cast and crew were inside the church working on getting some close-up shots of Alec Baldwin sitting on a church pew and manipulating his revolver. That scene was completed just before lunch, and so they called for a lunch break. And let me back up just a little bit.
Oh no, come on.
Before the lunch break was called, I want you all to see what was going on. This is so that gives you an idea of what was going on that morning. Alec Baldwin was sitting on a church pew, and he was practicing this draw from his holster with the camera crew kind of close up on top of him. So they completed that scene, and they called for the lunch hour to occur. So during the lunch hour, Ms. Gutierrez took the gun from Mr. Baldwin, and she took it back to the safe, the gun safe that was loaded on a prop cart. Once lunch was over, the production decided that they wanted to continue working inside of the church. But at this point, they weren't actually filming anything like they were in this video that I just showed you. And instead, they were doing what's called a blocking. And that is, in film terms, what you do before you even get to a rehearsal. So it's like a very rough rehearsal where the lighting director, the camera operator, and all of the folks are trying to get things situated so that they can then move into a rehearsal. Whenever a blocking is going on, because they aren't filming, there's really no need for the actor to have a live firearm in their hands, or even for the live firearm to be on set. You're going to hear from several witnesses, or from one witness in particular, who's going to testify that for purposes of blocking, Mr. Baldwin could have been using a stick, a rubber gun, anything that would essentially allow him to mimic a gun. It didn't have to be a live firearm. On that day, though, the defendant was asked to provide Mr. Baldwin with a live firearm for the blocking, and she did, and that was within her discretion to do so. You're going to hear
I don't know
that
if
on
I
the day
believe
of the
that,
shooting,
though.
Ms. Gutierrez
Does she
loaded
really
the
have
gun
power to say no?
in the morning with 5 rounds. The revolver, though, is a 6-shooter, so it can hold 6 rounds, but in that morning, she only was able to load 5 of them. After the lunch break was over, Ms. Gutierrez retrieved the gun from the safe, and she cleaned that 6th hole and was able to put a 6th round into the 6th slot. Ms. Gutierrez then took the firearm to the church and handed the gun over to the first assistant director, whose name is Dave Halls. Ms. Gutierrez and Mr. Halls then did a sloppy and incomplete safety check of the gun where the dummy rounds were not removed from the gun and rattled or checked to see if they had a hole drilled in it. Instead, she just kind of cracked open the gun and partially spun the cylinder to show Mr. Halls a few of the rounds, but they were not removed from the gun and they weren't all checked.
This is so boring.
After the incident happened, and when Ms. Gutierrez was being interviewed by the investigating officers, she stated that when she removed the gun from the safe to begin the filming for the afternoon session, she didn't recheck the ammunition. So when she pulled the gun out and put the 6th bullet in, she didn't independently check the rounds at that time either. Our witnesses are going to testify that when the defendant pulled the gun out of the safe after lunch, what she should have done was
Princess
open the
207,
gun
you and me
and
both.
independently herself checked each and every round. Then, when she took it to the church and handed it to Mr. Halls, she should have done a second complete ammo check with Mr. Halls, because this double redundancy is what helps prevent the kind of incidents that occurred to Miss Hutchins from happening. This means she should have opened the gun, removed each cartridge, confirmed that they were dummy rounds by individually shaking them, rattling them, or seeing the bored hole. And because these dummy rounds are so similar to live rounds, her decision to just crack it open and spin the cylinder a little bit to look at the head stamps wasn't enough. She needed to do a much more complete check. So having failed to do that check herself, she then handed the firearm to Mr. Halls anyway. She exited the church, and then Mr. Halls handed the firearm to Mr. Baldwin. As the blocking session was underway, Miss Hutchins and several of her crewmates were busily working, looking through and adjusting cameras, and Mr. Baldwin was sitting on that church pew practicing how he would hold the gun for the upcoming filming session. As Mr. Baldwin was manipulating the firearm, he caused it to discharge, and that unfortunately sent a projectile flying directly at Miss Hutchins. The projectile shot completely through Miss Hutchins and then struck the film's director, Joel Souza, in the shoulder. So at this point, the set paramedic was called into the church and began life-saving efforts on both Miss Hutchins and Mr. Souza. Another crew member who was in the church called 911 to report the shooting and to seek additional medical assistance. But because of the ranch's remote location, it took some time before additional medical personnel arrived. And this additional support also included a life flight helicopter for Miss Hutchins. A team of medical personnel worked to stabilize her, and they placed her on the life flight to UNMH. But sadly, the personnel at UNMH were unable to overcome the injuries that she sustained, and she was pronounced deceased at UNMH. We will show you, ladies and gentlemen, but that by failing to make those vital safety checks, the defendant acted negligently and without due caution, and that the decisions she made that day ultimately contributed to Miss Hutchins' death. So that's what happened on the 21st. But now I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened leading up to the 21st.
Okay, now we're going back
There
in
are
time.
some other ways that that Miss Gutierrez was negligent on the set. We intend to call several witnesses to give testimony that she regularly failed to properly carry out her duties as an armorer. These witnesses are going to describe the defendant's conduct as unprofessional and sloppy. You will hear testimony that she routinely left guns and ammunition lying around the set unattended, and that her gun safe and ammo cart were constantly disorganized. The second question that we want to answer for you is where these live bullets came from. The prospect of live ammunition landing up on a film set is incomprehensible. It's something that should never happen. It's a hard and fast industry rule that live ammunition should be miles away from a film set at all times because of the risk that it poses for being confused with the dummy rounds that are used on the set. I'm showing you a picture now of a box of ammunition that Miss Gutierrez says she was pulling cartridges from and loading into Mr. Baldwin's firearm on the day the fatal shooting occurred. If you can see the arrow that I'm kind of wiggling around here, this is the box of ammunition that she was pulling from. This is a box of dummies. This second box here is a box of blanks. So these are the kind of rounds that will pop and create smoke. These are the type of rounds that are just supposed to be completely inert.
Those do seem to be
When the
labeled
officers
separately.
arrived on the set,
To be fair.
after the shooting, this cart is where those two boxes of ammunition were first found. When the officer who was in charge of this prop cart uncovered that the boxes on there were the ones that were being used for that day's filming, he then placed them into his police unit. And that's what you saw in those previous slides. These are the boxes of ammunition inside of a cop car. Eventually, the box of dummies was taken back to the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office, where it was inventoried and photographed by a crime scene technician whose name is Marissa Popple, and she's going to be a witness in this case. The first box of dummies that was opened up is what is on your monitors right now. This is a styrofoam container that has approximately 37 cartridges in it. According to the label on the outside of the box, these are supposed to be dummy cartridges. And I don't know if you've noticed yet, but there is one of these cartridges that doesn't look like the others. It's that one with the red square. You can see that it has a silver primer, whereas all of the other ones have brass primers. The cartridge in that red box is a live bullet. So this was another live bullet that was found on the set.
Yeah, that's not good.
Not just the one
That's
that
not
was in
good
Mr.
for
Baldwin's
Gutierrez.
firearm. Ultimately, you're going to hear from us that there were not just these two, but a total of 6 live bullets that were found on the set. 6. You're also going to hear that all 6 of those live rounds have the same, have common characteristics of having this silver or nickel covered primer, a shiny brass casing, and what's called a Starline brass head stamp. I don't know if you can tell in your monitors or not, but this impression that is on each of these cartridges, it looks like a star and then a line and a star. That indicates that it's a Starline brass manufactured casing.
Dude, we do not need this much detail in the opening.
So we knew from the evidence gathered on October 21st, and when we had these rounds examined by the FBI, we discovered that there were actually those 6 live rounds on set. And so our next step was to determine whether there was any way, if we could tell when those live rounds ended up on the set. So we began to comb through all of the photos and videos that had been recorded on the set from the very first day the filming began. And we started to notice something. We were able to identify several points in time where the cartridges with a silver primer and a shiny brass cartridge ended up being spotted inside of the gun belts and bandoliers that the cast members were wearing on the set.
This is all vocab words that if you're
in
not
fact,
familiar with a firearm,
a
it's
photograph
going way over your
where
head. So if
there
you're a
was one
juror that's
occasion
not
where a
familiar
live round
with
was sitting
with
right
these
on Miss
terms,
Gutierrez's lap,
you're lost.
and she failed to identify it. What you're looking at now is a photograph of Miss Gutierrez, and on her lap in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that styrofoam casing holder. I'm going to show you a call out that's been enhanced a little bit. And you can see, I hope you can see on your monitors, that these bullets here kind of on the top right appear to have a brass casing, but at least these other two bullets, most definitely this cartridge that's in the blue circle, you can see that there is a silver primer
Iron Warrior Hansu, that's a fair point.
on that,
But you can't assume
on
that.
that cartridge. And we believe that was a live bullet sitting on her lap, and she failed to identify it. It's important that you know that this photograph was taken on October 10th. And the reason it's important for you to make note that this photograph was taken on October 10th is because the other dummy rounds that were purchased for this movie didn't even arrive to the set until October 12th. So this means that the live ammunition could not have been from the shipment that came in on October 12th and that belonged or that was supplied by somebody other than Ms. Gutierrez. This also will help you when you hear from the defendant's counsel, who are likely going to suggest to you that there was some kind of sabotage on afoot on the set, or that the live rounds came from someone other than Ms. Gutierrez. This photograph, we think, will help you conclude that the live rounds were on set on the 10th, and that the other dummy rounds didn't arrive until the 12th. We also have a little bit more evidence that these live rounds came onto the set via the defendant when she came to New Mexico from out of state. As you can see from this photo, this is the box of rounds. This is kind of a blown up photograph of the box of rounds that she was pulling from on the day of the shooting. And you can see that it has a very specific label on it. It says 45 long Colt dummies. And then in much smaller print there in the middle, you can see the initials JS. So on November 9th, a couple of weeks after the shooting, the defendant came into the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office for an interview with Corporal Hancock, and she was asked questions about the box of ammunition she was pulling from the day of the incident, this box with the small JS on the label. The defendant told Corporal Hancock that she thought this box was kind of peculiar and she wasn't certain where it came from, but she said that she didn't believe it was one of the boxes that was originally brought on set. But then the defendant offered to Corporal Hancock that the day prior to the interview, she had asked her father back home to text her a photograph of the box of 45 long Colt dummies that they had at his home. And she texted him, and he texted her this photo in response. It's identical. it's the same box. The box of dummies she was pulling from on the 21st is identical to the box of dummies that her father had at home. So we believe this is more evidence that this box of dummies with the live round in it came from the defendant. We're also going to show you how these live rounds slowly spread their way throughout the set, eventually landing in several of the actors' costumes and firearms on
Steven
October
Yarger, thanks for the
13th,
super chat.
15th, 17th.
Yeah, that
and
reads
of
45
course,
long
on the
Colts was saying you
21st.
dummies. How could it be misinterpreted?
And the image on your screen now, you can see in the large photograph, that's the bandolier that Mr. Baldwin was wearing on the 21st. There is a live round inside of that bandolier.
Carolyn
The
D, we are
black
missing
belt that's in the
some
lower
buzzwords,
right-hand
missing some
corner
theme words
is a
for
belt
sure.
that was worn by another cast member. There's a live round in that belt too. The evidence you're going to hear throughout this trial is that the defendant was unprofessional and that she failed to do the essential safety functions of her job, and that these failures resulted
Debbie
in
Cook,
live
is Jensen Ackles on the
ammunition
witness list?
being
I think
spread
so.
throughout this
I
entire
recognize
set.
the name. I think so.
Once the live
I've got to
ammunition
double
was
check
on the
though.
set, she failed to detect it because she didn't follow those essential safety protocols that required her to inspect every round before they were placed into the gun. The evidence will show that the defendant treated the safety protocols as if they were optional, rather than if people's lives counted on her doing her job correctly. We will show you that as a direct result of her failures, Ms. Gutierrez caused Ms. Hutchins' death. The last, or I should say, the second crime that Ms. Gutierrez
I
has
was
been
going to say the
charged
last
with
thing I'll
is
talk about.
tampering with evidence.
Okay.
The evidence with regard to this charge is a lot simpler. You're going to hear testimony that on the day that Ms. Hutchins was killed, and after the defendant left her interview at the sheriff's office, she went back to her hotel. Knowing that the defendant had probably been through a lot that day, one of her crewmates went to her room to check on her to see how she was doing. And after they were done visiting,
Okay, so this happened at the hotel, not on set.
Crew member got up to leave, and as she was walking out of the room, the defendant handed her something and asked her to hang on to it for her. At first, this crew member didn't really realize what she had been handed, so she walked out of the room, started down the hallway, and when she looked into her hand, she realized she had been handed a baggie of suspected cocaine from the defendant. She will testify that she was surprised that the defendant, who was somebody she hardly knew, would hand her a bag of suspected cocaine to hang on to for her. The crew member is going to testify that she disposed of the cocaine. She didn't want to be caught with it, so she just threw it away. And you're going to hear that the defendant over the next several weeks texted this crew member several times asking her to return
Just
her
because
stuff,
that was a big fight in the hearing over whether this would get
crew
severed
member is going to
from the other
testify
charges.
is in reference to the baggie of cocaine. I know I've gone through a lot of information with you guys, and I hope you're not too overwhelmed, but that's why we're going to spend the next couple of weeks with you going over all of this evidence in a lot more detail. You're going to hear from a multitude of law enforcement officers. You're going to hear from firearms experts. You're going to hear from 4 FBI analysts covering the topics of fingerprints,
Okay.
DNA, explosives comparisons, and firearms testing.
Okay.
You're going to hear from an image enhancement expert. And most importantly, you're going to hear from witnesses who worked with Ms. Gutierrez every day on the movie set, including the film's director and several of the crew members who were inside the church on the day of this horrific incident. We're confident that after you hear from these witnesses and after you have an opportunity to look at the evidence for yourself in greater detail, you will agree with us that the defendant's actions were not only negligent on October 21st, but on many days leading up to the 21st. We hope that after you review this information, you will find her guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And after reviewing and hearing from the witness concerning the tampering charge, we believe that you will also convict her on the tampering with evidence charge as well. I'm about done, but I do want to leave you with one final statement. And this is a statement that Ms. Gutierrez made when she was being interviewed on the day of the shooting. She says at the end, I don't know. I wish I would have checked it more. And so do we. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Megan Nelson.
Before we
thanks so much
take
for the
yours, I
super
think
chat.
we'll take a bathroom break, okay?
Bathroom break.
So
All
please
right.
don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. So go ahead, George, stand.
All rise.
Okay. Wow. All right. We got through it, guys. We got through the state's opening statement. Megan Nelson, thanks so much for the super chat. This feels more like he's trying to construct a story than an opening statement, a poorly drafted story, but hasn't really got a solid statement. Well, and the thing is, a good opening statement will often be told in a story format. Like you tell it as a narrative. You tell it as like, this is why you should care. It's in a lot of ways, it's very similar to crafting a good YouTube video. You know, like you've got to draw in the attention of the
All right, you
person
may be
who's supposed to
seated.
be hearing you out.
Why don't we get back here at 20 up?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, thank you. We're in recess.
Okay. So we actually are a little bit behind the live because I paused it to rant a little bit. So I'll catch up real quick on that. Yeah, I mean like a minute behind. All right. So we've got the exit sign. Okay. So I'll pull that off screen for now. But yeah, usually, I mean, you've got to keep in mind, you need to hold the attention of the people, even though the attorneys here have a captive audience, right? They have a captive audience. There's nowhere that these juries can go. They can't click out of a video. They can't get up and just walk out and go do what they want to do and make a sandwich. So like they have this captive audience, but you know, this opening statement was just word vomit of facts, which is what the jurors are going to be getting in this trial anyway. Like I kind of already talked about this in my rant earlier, right? That it's what you're supposed to do is to give them a framework so that they can properly understand and like file that away in their brain. So they're not just being like assaulted with facts over the next couple of weeks, right? There's a lot of detail that they're going to be getting, a lot of detail on dummy rounds and live rounds and casings and you know, like all kinds of things like that they're going to get. You don't need to overwhelm them from the very beginning. And also, by the way, assume that they know what these words are in the opening statement. Like if you know, folks in the chat, you know, made some good points that this is New Mexico, this is Santa Fe County. There's a really good chance that most of these people probably are familiar with firearms. They probably are familiar enough with firearms to be able to understand and follow along and all this kind of stuff. But if you have one juror who is not, you may or may not have lost them in this opening statement. Is that going to be fatal to the case? No, it's not. You know, there's plenty of trial to go. No one really loses or wins in an opening statement, but they're going to have some kind of ground to make up because we don't really know what the theme is necessarily, other than like what the overall charges are, which is, you know, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was negligent in her job duties. But like there are ways to hit that, to say this was her job, she didn't do it. This was her job, she didn't do it. This was her job, this is how she failed. You know, like this is just like it's very frustrating because I get the sense that this prosecutor got so stuck in the weeds, and what he needed was to pull back and introduce this case to someone that he hadn't been talking about it with, that hadn't already been living this case with him. I think if he had, he could have seen, okay, I need to cut out a lot of this detail so that I don't lose people, so that I can just tell this overarching story and people will get pulled in and want to know more. That's really what you need in an opening statement. You need to establish a framework, like I said, so people can organize the information on their own, and you need to set up a theme. So this is just what's very, very frustrating about this kind of death by PowerPoint opening statement, which is what we just got here. And also, like, a number of times he's like referring to dummy rounds kind of being hard to tell the difference between dummy rounds and live rounds. Like, he kind of alluded to that a couple times, which is not good for the state either. The more that the state makes it look like there was a lot of chaos on the set, that there was a lot of things that were just overall disorganized, the better the case for the defense. What they need to do is to make this case look very, very, very simple. And just to say, look, she had a job, she didn't do it. This was her job, she didn't do it. Because the more chaotic it looks, the more that the defense can say, well, this person didn't do their job, and that person didn't do their job, and that person didn't do their job, and that person didn't do their job. And much like in the movie Clueless, you can have Hannah Gutierrez-Reed being Amber saying, if she didn't do her job, I can't do mine. Like, this is an argument that the defense can potentially put on. Whether that's going to be convincing to the jury, I don't know, right? Like, we're I don't know, but it's still something that the defense can clearly use. So starting out, like, my impression from that opening statement is there was a lot of chaos. I don't know that the organization of all of these materials and all of these things, like, was that, like, she was in charge of safety and maintenance of the weapons. But was she in charge of how everything got organized? How the entire, how the entire prop department? No, I don't think she was. But how much of that was her responsibility? I don't know. It's not entirely clear to me. So I have this overall sense now that there's just a lot of chaos on set overall. And I don't know how much of that is really attributable to her. I don't know how much we can attribute that to her. Maybe that'll get clearer as trial goes on. I would hope that it would, but yeah, I don't know. This does not feel like, after this opening statement, I don't feel like, like we got to take this case against Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. She's definitely guilty. That's usually how you should feel after good state's opening statement. And then after the defense good opening statement, you should feel like, man, I don't know. Like, it's very frustrating. Now let me get a few more here. Ivan Nemla. I'm not a native English speaker, but is it rude to call the jury as guys? So he referred to the jury as, like, you guys. He mentioned this a couple times. What you guys are going to hear. This is a colloquialism that I think is going to be perfectly fine in New Mexico. If someone said it to a California jury, it would be fine. Like if it was in the South, you all or y'all, that's normal. New Mexico is like Southwestern United States. I think you guys is probably fine. I know that some people were rubbed the wrong way by that in the chat, but I don't see too much of a problem with that, especially as it's probably just like a local colloquialism. Debbie Faison Cook, thanks so much for the super chat. Can't gift from my phone. Make sure you turn on gifting because next week I'm making it rain. Oh, thanks so much. So kind of you. Jan, member for 15 months. Hey guys, good to see you. That guy was boring me, his voice. Yes, agreed. So let me see here in the chat, see if there's any questions that I may have missed. Okay. sorry, hang on. I was looking at it on the YouTube screen, but I need to get it on the StreamYard screen to actually pull it up on the screen. So give me 1 second here. I saw a funny quote here. Stephen Yarger, the opening statement was the judicial version of when you have to write an essay in school and it only came up with 7 strong sentences, but needed 3 pages. And that's the thing, is that a good opening statement is often like a very simple one. Like I remember, I didn't watch all of the Jennifer Crumbley trial, but I did watch the opening statements in both. And I remember the state's was very short. It was short and to the point, very simple, straightforward, saying this is what happened, this is the tragedy, this is how she's responsible, and this is how we're going to show it. That's all you need to do. That's all you need to do in the opening statement. That's it. And it was just they sat down and I was like, damn, that's a really good opening statement. Really good opening statement. And then the defense got up there and quoted Taylor Swift and all kinds of weirdness happened. And I was much less impressed by that one. But that's an example of how like you don't need to go complicated. You really don't need to, because it's when you go for a long time, you have to remember that people can't necessarily pay attention to all of that. And it's just like it's almost as if he thought that this was his one opportunity to like throw in all this detail. Meanwhile, they're going to get it over the next 2 weeks. So anyway, let's see here. Nomad Purple, should he have explained the words negligence and involuntary manslaughter to the jury? Do they even know what they are looking for in testimony? I think, well, so the judge did give, I don't know if you saw just before the opening statements, but the judge did give some instructions ahead of time to the jury. I don't think that she defined involuntary manslaughter and negligence, however. And you don't need to even get to that level of detail necessarily for this case. Because they're going to get all of those instructions at the end. They'll have them read out in court, and then they'll have them written out and printed out on paper for them. So, at this point, I don't necessarily need to define it. I mean, if he's using those terms, it's helpful. It can be helpful, but you can also get into just too much detail that can weigh things down even with that. But you can just say like, with criminal negligence, what we're getting at is she had an important job, and her job meant safety or non-safety of the people around her. And then on the other hand, you have what she did, which was not her job. This is how she failed. It's like that. You need those one-to-one matchups to make it really clear for the jury to say like, the evidence will show she didn't check the way that she should have checked. The evidence will show she was supposed to check. This was in her job duty to check this and that and the other thing. And this is what she did do. And this is what she didn't do. The evidence will show that she had drugs on her, at a certain point. And the evidence will show that she was openly talking about using drugs and alcohol. The evidence will show that she had live rounds in her hotel room with drugs and alcohol in her hotel room together at some point. Like the evidence will show that it's just like you line it up so that people can just have a very simple one-to-one. So anyway, but yeah, do they know what they are looking for in testimony? That's the whole point of the opening statement too. That's, like I said, this is what's so frustrating. Iron Warrior Hansu, would they be allowed to let jurors handle a live round in the courthouse and a dummy round? I mean, the judge did say that the evidence that gets introduced, they're allowed to handle it. They're allowed to examine it themselves. I guess examine it is what she said. I don't know about physically handling it. But at some point, they're going to be able to get a very close look at whatever evidence has been brought in. And they might have, I don't know, if it's just a demonstrative, however, meaning there's like an expert that is, showing here's a dummy round and here's a live round, but it's not getting introduced as evidence, but it's just being used, as a demonstrative.
Counsel, will you approach?
That's not yeah, something that the jury will be able to examine on their own because it's not introduced as evidence. Nov A42. Did we already have defense opening? Did I miss it, you guys? No, defense is not gone yet. We are on recess right now. Let me show you real quick here. Judge is talking to the attorneys. I anticipate we'll get started really quick. Let me get the super chat real quick. Austin S.A. Shockingly terrible open, but probably enough for this trial. That dog won't hunt against Baldwin. He's got enough money to crush his amateur hour. Could very well be. Could very well be. Yeah. Ken 1936. Does anyone know, is this the reason some of the crew walked off the day before because of the armor? I think there had been some negligent discharges actually, or unintended discharges from the firearms a couple times, but there were also other issues, payment issues, hotel distances, things like, there were a number of issues as to why people walked off set. Joan, how much actual evidence is usually shown in opening statements? If it's approved by the court ahead of time, they can show a lot. I mean, in the Rittenhouse trial, for example, they showed video. I guess they showed video in this one too, but there's a lot can be introduced so long as it's approved by the court. All right. Looks like we're waiting for the jury to come back in. Oh. Just watch your volume when the court stream volume came on, your mic volume went mute. Thank you for letting me know. Very strange. It shouldn't do that. I should be able to have both on at the same time, but thank you. A scout and a Bradley. Can we see a real Bruce Kit in this trial? Oh, man. Miss Fitness 3. I mean, yeah, there definitely were points that he made that were good. The problem is it's so easy to lose track of those. The jury may or may not have caught those details because it was so lost in the weeds there with all of the other details that he was giving. So it's hard to focus on so much minutia when you're just getting acquainted with the story, right? You're just getting acquainted with, like, what is this case even about? So absolutely. I agree with you that there were some good points that he did make here. But yeah, it's the problem is, will the jury actually have retained that? What are they actually able to latch on to? AB short clips. Is there testimony beyond opening statements today? Probably. My guess is probably yes, because opening statements are starting in the morning. So at least one witness is my guess. Okay, jury is in. So maybe we'll actually get like a theme here, a storyline.
You may be seated. Mr. Bowles?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Defense opening statement now.
May it please the court, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are privileged, our team, to represent Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, who's sitting over here. And we're here because of a tragedy. There's no doubt. There was a tragic occurrence on that movie set. But let me tell you something you already know. Just because there was a tragedy does not mean that a crime was committed. It does not mean that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed caused the crimes they have charged her with. And we are going to, through the course of this case, show you that production and the state have both very early on sought to make Hannah Gutierrez-Reed a scapegoat. That's what this is about. You're going to hear that this tragedy, several unconnected events, independent events had to happen to create it. First, the first event that had to happen is the actor, Alec Baldwin, pointed a gun on that set, and he either had his finger on the trigger and the hammer cocked, or he pulled the trigger as he was pointing that at Miss Hutchins and Mr. Souza, who was right behind her. And make no mistake, this is not a prop gun. This is a real gun. Mr. Baldwin pointed it right at him, either had his finger on the trigger and depressed, or pulled it, causing that gun to fire and hit Miss Hutchins. That's the first thing that had to happen. Miss Gutierrez-Reed, you're not going to hear anything about her being in that church or firing that weapon. That was Alec Baldwin. You will hear that Hollywood actors are not allowed to point guns, real guns, at other actors or crew. It's like every other safety with guns in any other place in society. You learn these rules and go into the classes. You learn these rules if you've ever owned a gun. Rule number one, never point a firearm at somebody unless you intend to shoot them. And that rule was broken. And that's going to be the first thing you're going to hear that caused this tragic accident.
Including Baldwin, number one.
The second thing is that Hannah is being made a scapegoat for are deliberate errors and mistakes by production. So the opening, counsel for the state talked about Miss Gutierrez-Reed and tried to put all of the onus on her. At the time, she was 24 years old. She had been hired for two duties, a props assistant, and you're going to hear what that is, and the armorer role. Two different duties. So they were splitting her between those and making her, for example, roll cowboy cigarettes. That was one of them for the movie, and they had props that the actors have. And so she was having to do that to take away from her armorer duties. You're going to hear about that. Now, OSHA is a New Mexico agency, and that New Mexico agency inspected the movie and investigated this shooting after the shooting. You're going to hear that OSHA found fault with production. They found numerous faults, numerous mistakes on production's part, not Miss Gutierrez-Reed on production. You're going to hear that OSHA indicated that there was a rush set, that there were several safety errors, and I'm going to talk about those in a moment, but I want to make that very clear. When the state talks about Miss Gutierrez-Reed being negligent,
OSHB,
what really happened is production was
bureau
negligent.
instead of
Production put her in that position. They put her in the position of having two jobs, a props assistant and an armorer, and expected a 24-year-old under really tough conditions to keep up with everything that was going on. And you're going to hear about that. You're going to hear that Miss Gutierrez-Reed emailed the production manager, Gabrielle Pickle, who was on the set. You're going to hear Gabrielle Pickle. And she asked her for more armorer days. She said in this email, when I'm not able to focus on my armorer duties, this is when mistakes happen. And she was
good for defense.
Telling her this. Now, Miss Pickle came back and said, no, we only have 8 armorer days, and that's all you're going to get. So
that's good for
out
defense.
of the whole course of the movie, they didn't allow her to be an armorer and to perform those duties to the extent that she had to. And that's going to be a very important point too. They moved her between two different things, props assistant and armor. Counsel for the state in his opening said that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed had the job of sourcing the ammo and sourcing the firearms on set. Now you're going to hear when you go through this about another name, and her name is Sarah Zachary. Sarah Zachary was the props head. So as the head of props department, she was Ms. Gutierrez-Reed's boss. In that role, Sarah Zachary had to source the ammunition and had to source the firearms. So that was not correct, what counsel stated in the opening. In reality, that was Sarah Zachary's job. Now you're going to hear that what happened is those two worked together in conjunction. Hannah Ms. Gutierrez-Reed was supposed to be doing armor, and then she was supposed to run over and help Sarah Zachary whenever she wanted the help on props. So a lot of what you're going to hear is a chaotic scene created by production and forcing somebody to do these two different roles. You're going to hear witnesses in this case, including professional armorer that the state has hired, and other people that'll tell you it's completely inadvisable and a terrible decision on a movie like this with so many guns that you have a part-time armor. It's not a good idea. And that's a terrible idea, but that's what they did. Now, as counsel stated, you will hear that this scene in the church was a blocking. It was a getting ready for a rehearsal. So you're going to hear that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed had brought the gun to Mr. Halls, that Mr. Halls never should have handled that weapon. And you're going to see he had a lot of experience in movies. He knew better. He had the weapon. He did not inspect that fully. And you're going to see that Mr. Baldwin didn't inspect it at all. So when counsel showed you that video on the first part of it, when he's sitting in that pew and doing that cross draw, you're going to hear about that. You're going to hear how dangerous a seated cross draw is. It's one of the more dangerous draws you can do because you're pulling the weapon across your body, and you can also pull it across other people. So you're going to hear that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed specifically requested to train Mr. Baldwin in a cross draw. You're also going to hear that he did not do that training. He did not set that training up. So when this tragic shooting occurred, it was in the very motion of a cross draw. You're also going to hear that this scene, this blocking, didn't even require him to draw that weapon. So it's just going to be an extreme close-up scene of his hand pulling out of his holster. And they were going to focus on that, create tension in the scene in the movie. Instead, for whatever reason, Mr. Baldwin pulled it out, and it ends up being pointed right at Ms. Hutchins, the camera, and Mr. Souza. You're also going to hear, we're going to talk about in the course of this case, there's Hollywood tricks. These guns should never be pointed at another person. That instead what should happen is there's camera tricks that you can use to make it look like it's pointed, but it's not. There's also things we're going to talk about that Mr. Baldwin did at that moment that he violated, and safety rules. Our gun and ammunition expert, Mr. Kuski, who you're going to hear from, is going to discuss safe gun handling and usage and go through safety bulletins. These safety bulletins apply on this set to movie actors, and he's going to talk about that. Second, let me talk about the live rounds. Now, the state has a relatively new theory, which is based totally on pictures. And you saw some of those pictures. And it's also based on the idea that live rounds have a silver primer on this set. So that's going to be the core of their argument and their theory. And you saw in the picture, one of them had a silver primer. And the primer is just that circle in the middle of the round on the back where the hammer hits, and that's what caused the round to fire. Now,
he's benefiting that
what
the
you
state showed
didn't
that
hear in
picture, but I
state's
wish he
opening
would
was
have
that
shown that picture
there's going
here.
to be numerous dummy rounds that also have silver primers that were on this set. There was a FBI report you're going to see that a box removed from the prop truck had 16 silver primer dummies and one silver primer suspected live round. So this was a box found in the prop truck. So the theory that all the silver primer rounds are live is not correct. It's just not true.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
you're going to hear during the course of this evidence, because of these silver primer dummies, that theory does not work. Second, you're going to hear that Rust Production ordered all the dummies on set. Rust Production sourced these primarily from a man named Seth Kinney. Seth Kinney owned PDQ Props. PDQ Props was the primary supplier to the Rust set. Now you're going to hear that after the shooting, Seth Kinney was extremely active in contacting the sheriffs and trying to work with them and trying to point the finger away from himself. And you're going to hear about that. You're also going to hear that Sarah Zachary, who I told you about earlier, after the shooting, she sent a text to Seth Kinney and it said emergency. Now, Sarah Zachary works for Seth Kinney and PDQ Props. She worked on set, but she was under him. She sent a text to Seth Kinney saying emergency. You're then going to hear that they had a phone call very shortly after. This is just minutes after the shooting. Sarah and Seth are talking on the phone. Now, we don't have that actual phone call, but whatever was said, here's what happened the very next thing. Sarah Zachary goes over and removes rounds from two of the weapons, two of the actors' guns, and she throws them away. Now, that's absolute and complete scene tampering. And when she first was interviewed by the sheriff, Sarah Zachary said, "I was panicked, and that's all I can tell you." Now, I expect in the course of this case, you're going to hear that when she was interviewed, she's going to say something like, "I threw them away because that's what we do after scenes." And you're going to get to evaluate her credibility and determine, why would these be thrown away? If they're dummy rounds, they're rounds that can be reused. They cost money. It doesn't make sense. You would just throw them away. And what was the real reason Sarah Zachary threw those rounds away right after her call with Seth Kinney? Now, you're also going to hear that right after the shooting, Sarah Zachary went over and she shook some rounds and determined that they didn't shake, meaning she felt like they were live rounds. So then she throws these away. Now, they're thrown in trash. She tells law enforcement, but on that day, they don't find them. But she threw them in trash right by the prop truck, you're going to hear, but they didn't find them. So we don't have those rounds. And you're not going to be able to hear this in the course of this case or see what Sarah Zachary threw away. You're not going to be able to have that because they were never recovered. That's scene tampering. Mm-hmm. You're also going to hear another instance of scene tampering, that Sarah Zachary carried items from the prop cart. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that prop cart. Right after the shooting, she carried items to the prop truck. So she moved items from the cart, knowing there had been a shooting, knowing law enforcement's going to be here, to the prop truck.
Yikes.
So the other problem with the state's theory now, and showing you that picture of those boxes in Benavides' truck and how they were kept on the seat, is that we don't know what was taken from the cart completely. What we do know is that one box, Seth Kinney's box, appeared and was found in the prop truck. And we know that Sarah Zachary transported items from the prop cart to the prop truck. We know that. But we're never going to know exactly what was on that cart at the time of the shooting because it was tampered with. We're also not going to know, because you're going to see on Officer Benavides' lapel video, that right after the shooting, Miss Gutierrez-Reed was taken into his vehicle and segregated. She was segregated from all the other witnesses. She's sitting in his vehicle. Officer Benavides Deputy Benavides feels like he has to stay with Miss Gutierrez-Reed because she's distraught. So he tells another person to go get the prop cart. The prop cart is over by the church. He tells somebody else to walk over and get it. Now, I think he's going to acknowledge that he should have gone and got that prop cart. Problem with that is this is just a random, this is not a law enforcement, not random, we know who it is, but this is law enforcement's job to secure the scene. After a shooting like this, you don't want evidence to go walking away. You don't want it to go missing. You don't want it, because we're here on a reasonable doubt standard. That standard is the highest standard under our law. That means you can't convict somebody in this country, no matter who they are, unless you prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And what we've got here is theories based on evidence that has already been tampered with. And you're going to hear that in this case. That's not even going to be questioned. So you're going to have to take the leap that whatever Sarah took to the prop truck, we don't know. And whatever she did with those rounds, we don't know. And you may not know why. But I can tell you, it occurred right after the call with Seth Kenney. And you're going to hear about that. You're going to hear about his contacts with a witness named Del Reed. Del Reed is the father of Miss Gutierrez-Reed. Del Reed is one of the most renowned armorers in the history of movies.
Probably how she got the job.
You're going to hear that he's been doing this for over 50 years. He's trained Brad Pitt, Sharon Stone, Denzel Washington. He did Tombstone. Some of you might have seen that. He did 3:10 to Yuma. He's the real deal. And you're going to hear that he trained Miss Gutierrez-Reed. She was very well trained. She also went to film school, and she completed a bachelor's degree in that. So you're going to see that she was trained, she was educated, and she was ready for this job. Now, it was her second job as head armorer. You're going to hear that she had one prior, and then she had also worked as an assistant on another movie. But you're going to hear that from the time she was a little girl, her dad, Del Reed, had her on these movie sets, and he was training her. Now, Thel, the reason why I mention him is he and Seth Kenney, right before Rust started, were on another movie set called Yellowstone 1883, and that occurred in Texas. You're going to hear that Thel Reed brought live rounds. These were 45 Colt live rounds to Texas, and he and Seth Kenney were going to train the actors on a range, not on the set, but on a range. So they sometimes train these actors to fire the weapon and see how the recoil is and kind of get a feel for it for the movie scene. So he brought these live rounds. They did the training. They did Yellowstone 83. And then Seth Kenney kept these live rounds in an ammo can. He did not give them back to Thel Reed. And again, you're going to see these were 45 Colt live rounds. Fast forward. Wasn't that much longer, within months,
may have a case,
that we have Rust set. And Seth Kenney is the primary supplier of ammunition to the Rust set. You're going to see evidence in this case that Seth Kenney's rounds in a box that the sheriffs found were blued. They were a certain color. And we'll remind you, as we go through, we'll highlight that, but they were a certain color. And you're going to see, for example, on the picture that the state showed you in their opening, the live round they said that was in that gun belt, it's the same color. And you're going to be able to put that together as the evidence comes through. It's the same color as the rounds that Seth had that were blued. You're also going to hear that the sheriff's investigation, they never took Seth Kenney's fingerprints. They never took his DNA. They didn't take his cell phone. So again, we're going to be missing evidence. Knowing that Seth Kenney was the primary ammunition supplier, knowing that he and Sarah Zachary had talked right after the shooting, Sarah had thrown rounds away, Sarah had moved stuff from the prop truck, none of Seth Kenney's phone, fingerprints, or DNA were taken. And you're also going to hear that there was no request to the FBI to check those live rounds for fingerprints or DNA. None. So the FBI lab was requested to do a bunch of forensic tests. They were testing the firearm Mr. Baldwin used to see if it functioned correctly. You're going to hear about other tests they did, but no testing on the live rounds. 0. Again, that's going to be evidence that you are never going to see or have because the government didn't do it. And again, we have a reasonable doubt standard. Our expert, Mr. Kuski, is going to talk about the government's theory, state's theory, about these colors and the rounds. And I talked about that earlier briefly, but I'm just going to say it again because it's so important. You cannot tell a live round from a dummy by a picture. And the reason for that is that the dummies are made in Hollywood to look just like
Ain't
live
that
rounds.
the truth?
Now,
Sorry.
the point of that is the people watching the movie don't know that it's a dummy. They're made to look just like a live round. Now, the picture counsel for the state showed earlier showed a hole in that round. That is how they make some of the dummies. It's not how they make all the dummies. Some of the dummies, unfortunately, do not shake and they do not have a hole in them. And you're going to hear that one of those rounds was on this set. It's going to be in the CSI Tech, Miss Popple. It's in her report. It's called the Denix round from Spain. That round did not shake. So that's a dummy that looks like a live round, and it does not shake with the BB, so you can tell. Mr. Kuski is going to talk about how this is highly dangerous and how Miss Gutierrez-Reed was faced with the situation on this set of dealing with a mixed match of dummies, cheap dummies, he's going to call garbage,
I feel like he's
that
talking
were
about
just
people.
thrown together that she had to deal with. Again, while OSHA's going to tell you she's being rushed, she's having to perform 2 jobs, she's asking for more resources and help from her manager, and she's not getting it. Third, you're going to hear that David Halls, the first assistant director, that he's going to say Miss Gutierrez-Reed was doing a good job. Now he's going to, and she did good with safety on set. He was the first assistant director. He was the one that took the firearm and handed it to Baldwin. You're going to hear testimony that he never should have had that firearm, never. You're going to hear from a director, PJ Pesh, who's done movies for over 30 years. PJ Pesh has done, you're going to hear about all his credits. He's worked on all kinds of movies. He's going to tell you that he's never seen a first assistant director in all those movies ever handle a weapon and hand it to the actor. This was a highly, highly unusual setup and management created by production. That was their fault. And what they've tried to do, and what you're seeing in this courtroom today, is trying to blame it all on Hannah, the 24-year-old, because why? Because she's an easy target. She's the least powerful person on that set. So what do? And you're going to see the evidence. They target her. You're also going to hear that David Halls, he did not address prior safety issues. And this is part of the thing that OSHA found. David Halls, there were 2 accidental or negligent discharges on set. And what that is Sarah Zachary had one of them, and a stunt double for Baldwin had another one. What those are, you have a firearm with a blank in it, and you don't either decock it, it's called, where you put the hammer down slowly so it doesn't fire. You don't do that right, and then it goes off unexpectedly. Sarah Zachary did that. The second one you're going to hear, a stunt double had a misfire, and these were on the same day, 5 days before the shooting, October 16th, the same day within an hour apart. Miss Gutierrez-Reed addressed it by talking about them because these are safety incidents. You can't have misfires like this, negligent discharges like this. People are walking around, they don't have ear protection. These blanks can actually fire off stuff out of smoke and everything that can It's dangerous. So David Halls did not do anything about it. Again, that's his job. You're going to hear that he was the security coordinator for the entire set. But David Halls didn't delay. He didn't order additional training. You're going to hear some of the head people, if you hear from them in this trial for Rust Production, some of the head guys, they didn't even know about it. So they weren't informed about it. That's how much the production cared about safety. Because you know what the primary thing was here? It was rush, get this done so we can get the money. And that's all on production. And Mr. Baldwin is one of the primary producers. That's on them. Ms. Gutierrez-Reed had no control over that. Finally, you're going to hear from OSHA that Rust Production didn't adhere to several safety rules that they have to adhere to on set. That's why they were fined. They're given the largest fine in the history of New Mexico.
Yeah.
Over this case. Because of what they did. You're going to hear that they didn't have a procedure to ensure live rounds were not brought into set. Nor did they give Ms. Zachary or Ms. Gutierrez-Reed enough time to thoroughly inventory. You're going to hear that Halls did not conduct daily safety meetings, and there was no safety instruction prior to Baldwin using the gun in the church. You're going to hear that Russ failed to accord Ms. Gutierrez-Reed more training days, and she was not able to train Baldwin on the cross draw. And you're going to hear again that Mr. Baldwin, one of the lead producers, head actor in the movie, who really controlled the set, you're going to hear that he violated some of the most basic gun safety rules you can ever learn. From a young age, we all learn you don't point a gun at somebody ever, unless you want to shoot them. You treat all guns as loaded, and you keep your finger out of the trigger until you're ready to shoot. He violated all those. It wasn't Ms. Gutierrez-Reed, it was Mr. Baldwin. Now you're going to hear from some other witnesses. There's going to be a lot of them, but the core principles at the end are you're going to be missing critical evidence. You're going to not hear about Seth Kenney because the government didn't investigate him. It chose not to. Mr. Kenney, primary ammo supplier, talking with Sarah Zachary, she's throwing stuff away. They didn't go after him. They went after Ms. Gutierrez-Reed. And you can think about that. Why would they do that? Ms. Gutierrez-Reed did the best job she could under very, very tough circumstances, trying to get into this profession, a profession she really wanted to do. She was trained by her dad, a longtime armorer, 24 years old. She had insufficient time to do her armorer duties because she was also forced to do props. And management made a number of mistakes and did not create the proper atmosphere. Rust Production and the state want to scapegoat her. She is not guilty of the crimes charged against her. And the prosecution must prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, and I submit they will not in this trial, for the reasons I've stated and the evidence that you will see.
All right.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. As requested by the council on directing any one that's going to be called as a witness in this case, including an expert witness as stipulated by the council, that none of these witnesses may be viewing this trial live stream on Court TV.
Or here.
Call your first witness.
Your Honor, the state called Nicholas Door.
All right.
Nicholas Floor. Sorry if the spelling's wrong, but I've updated the pinned comment in the chat. A Scout and a Bradley, thanks so much for the super chat. Any one-off in the military? No, you don't throw, I think, brass away. You reload it. Heck, I do that at my house all the time. I mean, there's a lot that happened on this set that is not what most people would do that
Have
are
you
very familiar with
advised,
firearms.
Grace, use that word.
I'll take
Yeah.
care of it.
All right, thank you.
We did previously,
But yeah,
Nicholas Flamel. Thank you, Derek Boodle. He's about 365 years old. But yeah, that was a good opening. That was good. That was good. We could follow along what he was saying. We weren't getting lost in the weeds.
do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, have a seat, talk into the microphone. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Good.
Would you please state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Officer Nicholas LaFleur, and then the last name is spelled Lefleur.
It's French.
Officer LaFleur, how are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed with the city of Santa Fe.
And how long have you worked for the city of Santa Fe?
Going on 2 years.
And what is your role at the city of Santa Fe?
I'm a police officer.
All right. Prior to working at the Santa Fe Police Department, where were you employed?
With the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department.
All right. And is that where you were employed on October 21st, 2021?
Yes, sir.
All right. And on October 21st, 2021, were you called out to the Rust movie set?
Yes, sir.
How did you receive that call?
It came over the radio as I was in close proximity.
Did you receive any information as part of that call?
That someone had been shot on a movie set.
All right. And what did you do in response to that call?
Got out there as safely and as quickly as I could.
And when you arrived to the set, were there any other law enforcement personnel there?
I was the first one there. I believe there was a volunteer firefighter unit in front of me.
Okay. And when you arrived on the set, where did you arrive?
Right in front of the church they had set up as a prop piece.
Okay. And on that day, were you wearing a lapel camera or a body-worn camera?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move for
We're not
admission
gonna
of
see
State Exhibit
this.
1 that's been stipulated to by counsel.
All right.
May I have permission to publish it to the jury?
Yes.
And do we want to do a reminder to cut the live stream? This is
I
that
just did
video.
it.
You did.
This is the
Okay.
one you need to cut the live stream. Thank you.
So yeah, we're not going to be seeing this probably because of how gruesome it looks. We're going to hear it. We might. If not, I'm going to get some questions here. Questions and comments. Kevin Dietz, I think you need to show that there were unaddressed safety issues that directly led to the accident, not just a bunch of nitpicky stuff. Talking about defense strategy, I agree. I totally agree, because it has to be something that is going to undermine her culpability, her liability, right? Mystery singer Sarah the Prom Master texted Seth, who supplied the film bullets, that Hannah was blackout drunk and bought live bullets on set from her shooting them the night before. I don't know that there are any text messages talking about her actually bringing live rounds while drinking and doing drugs. But if there are, then we'll see those texts. They'll get introduced for sure. David Puff. So which is she, a 24-year-old innocent child or the trained professional? I think that the defense here is trying to walk a thin line here between saying she's a trained professional as it goes with firearms. However, her being young was a detriment to her ability to manage the big personalities, the big Hollywood personalities like Alec Baldwin. I mean, as a lawyer, I would hate to have him as a client. I will tell you this. I would absolutely hate that. And that's as a lawyer. I can only imagine as somebody who's in the industry, doesn't have independent authority necessarily. I mean, other than like, yes, you are the person who's in charge of firearms, but you kind of have to claim that for yourself on a set. Unless folks can correct me if I'm wrong. Folks that have worked on a movie set, please do. But what they're trying to get at here is like, she's young And so managing those personalities and holding that kind of line with those big egos is harder when you're younger, but she has all of this knowledge of firearms. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying that's what I got from the defense. But yeah, Ian, I agree. Her job is to shut down things if there's danger. I agree. I totally agree. Which is why having a 24-year-old head armorer is probably a terrible idea, because who is going to actually listen to her? You need people to actually respect her position in order for it to actually work. Kevin Dees, I watched Sarah's police interview and I don't recall her saying anything about blackout drunk. All right. I mean, well, one way or another, we'll get that in. We'll get that evidence. Life with Danny, I'm just really curious to see what precedent this sets for film in the future, because props often handle weapons. They are props, or often handles weapons. They are props. So having someone deal with both is not uncommon. I mean, that's fair. But I can see some changes in the industry happening. I mean, the last time there was a really big criminal case from a film set was the Twilight Zone movie. But yeah, and there were some actual changes in the industry after that, because people were scared shitless about a director being able to be criminally charged, even though he was acquitted ultimately. Bees, OSHA conducted massive interviews and made that determination that Baldwin was producer in name only. I don't know that they can make that determination. They may have sort of indicated that was their opinion, but I don't know that they can really make that, because that's not what they were there to investigate necessarily. But I will say that the prosecution in recent months, before they charged him again, they indicated that they came across or found some new evidence that basically shows that he was much more of an active producer than they initially thought. I don't know what evidence they have to support that. Maybe it's bullshit, maybe it's strong, but we'll find out at some point, hopefully, assuming that the case ultimately does go to trial. My guess is that one, they're not going to let him take a plea. I don't know if they're going to offer him a plea deal, or if they have offered him a plea deal. Tish, I'm behind. What are the rules of opening statements? I was listening for the evidence will show and X will testify to, but I rarely heard it during prosecution's opening statement. So one of the big reasons why people will say, the evidence will show, or this witness will tell you, that witness will testify, is to anchor what you're saying with giving a roadmap for the jury. And you're not arguing, because you're not supposed to argue in opening statements. You're allowed to and encouraged to argue in closing arguments. So it's an opening statement, not a closing argument, or not an opening argument. God, sorry. That's why it's an opening statement and a closing argument. Sorry. So it's just good practice, generally speaking, to frame as much of what you're saying as the evidence will show, X will testify to. And this was just a bad opening statement, partly because it's also beneficial to the jury just to have that sort of anchor of oh, okay, this is what I'm going to see. But yeah, it was a little rough there. I'm not sure what's going on here. We've got some more tech issues going on with the state. This is opening statements also had some tech issues, partway through in the beginning. It was so long we may have forgotten about it, but now I remember that he was trying to get some tech set up, and then after 2 or 3 sentences into his opening statement. Again, this is why you try to have this stuff set up before you actually call them, before you actually have them sitting up there. So he's not just sitting there twiddling his thumbs right now, just looking around the room, waiting for what's going to happen. One of the things that came up in the defense opening statement that some people had some questions about was, he mentioned OSHA, New Mexico, the New Mexico agency of OSHA investigating this case. What he's actually referring to is New Mexico's Occupational Safety and Health Bureau, but everybody just kind of refers to it as OSHA, which is the same as the federal administration, the federal agency, which is OSHA, which investigates cross country. New Mexico, like a lot of states, has its own version of OSHA as well, but theirs is OSHB. But it's a lot easier to say OSHA rather than OSHB. So I'm guessing that that's why he's referring to it as OSHA. I've seen it referred to as OSHA in other hearings and stuff before as well, even though technically what they're referring to is the New Mexico version, which is OSHB. And that's who ended up putting out a report and all kinds of stuff and issuing a fine to Russ Productions and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, Steven Yarger, exactly. OSHBA. So Derek Boodle, LaFleur's testimony is weak so far. The poor guy hasn't had an opportunity to really do anything other than tell us who he is, where he works, and that he has a video to show us. This is really bad. This is really bad. The state is not showing a very solid and smooth case right now so far. I really hope for their sake that this smooths out, because this is not good.
What, this? Okay.
Are we moving now? Oh no. They're still trying to work it out.
Just exit out of this?
Yeah, Patrick Masters Productions. This does not make the state look very good. I will say that. This really should have been set up beforehand so that as soon as they get up and they've got body cam footage to show, they bring it up, show it to the jury, and they move on.
Let's start the video back from the beginning.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it out.
Okay, we're able to hear the body cam footage.
Are we inside with the BBMs?
Can everybody hear it?
Yes, we can.
Because in the back of the room you can't hear anything.
That's not great for the ears.
Okay, let's stop there. Officer, what are you getting out of your truck? What's happening in that portion of the clip we just watched?
So I arrive on scene, go around to my passenger seat where I keep the shooting trauma kit, hand it to what I believe was one of the volunteer firefighters, and then have some trouble with everything that's locked because it was a new unit and everything, which wasn't used to pulling it out as fast. And then I go retrieve a BVM kit. It's a bag valve mask for airway purposes. It can help an individual get oxygen.
Okay, thank you.
We got a seal. You have a seal? A seal? I got a sterile glove and a packing glove. Over there.
This is, of course, put the realness in front of the jury.
Okay. You want air flight? Yeah, we going in route. Okay. .32 Santa Fe, one female shot in the chest, male shot in the stomach, requesting air flight.
So the display, actually, the court does not want us to see this. And it's probably because of how gruesome it looks. But they called in court TV personnel and told them not to play this on the cameras while it's showing, specifically for this witness with this body cam footage. So this is why we're not watching it. It's because the court does not want us to see it.
32 Santa Fe, both approximately 140 pounds. Elderly male and young female. Because it was a new unit and everything. She wasn't used to pulling it out as fast. And then I go retrieve a BVM kit. It's a bag or mask. For purposes.
They're like replaying something.
Okay. Thank you.
He looks very confused.
IT, that was just a replay of his previous testimony.
Yes. So that is, it's going to be common in this kind of a case for that to be the beginning, is the body cam footage of the first responders responding to it and her death and all that kind of stuff.
Please, Brian, will you go get Grace? Will you go get Grace? Approach the bench with counsel.
Uh-oh. So this is the court TV person. I guess we're not going to hear this sidebar. Yeah, Grace is I believe, the court TV person. That's who she was talking to before when she called in the court TV personnel to direct about where they were going to be pointing the cameras. Yeah, I don't know why that also then played. I wonder so that must be why she called court TV in, because somehow the recording of his testimony got played through, got lumped through. That was very strange. Link Journey, I think that might be what they're trying to figure out, because that did sound like exactly what he just testified. Nomad Purple, yeah, tech problems. Courthouses are not exactly known for being particularly tech savvy. I don't know about Santa Fe County, what their reputation is with tech. Some counties are more with it than others. But tech problems will happen. They will. The issue is to get familiar with the system and get familiar with what you're going to need to do to make things smoother.
break. Okay, so why don't you be back downstairs at 12:30? Would that work for you all? Okay, so follow George's directions, but you know where to go on the first floor and wait for George, okay? Thank you. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Thank you very much.
So is this lunch now? What is this mountain time? I need to do some conversions. Yeah, Jake Altman, there's plenty of blame to go around, but she can't pass it all on to others. So that's the thing. That's the thing, is that two things can be true at the same time, right? Alec Baldwin can be guilty of criminal negligence for the way that he handled that firearm and pulling back the hammer and maybe pulling the trigger and all that kind of stuff. David Halls may have his own, well, he pled guilty to having criminal negligence on his own. But, you know, like, and Russ Productions can have responsibility, but that doesn't necessarily remove all liability from or the fact that other people were criminally negligent or you know, negligent in other ways, maybe criminally, maybe not criminally. That doesn't necessarily automatically remove her liability, right? What the defense needs is to show that things were so bad that there is no way that she could have successfully performed her job duties, that she was calling into, and like this is an important point from the opening statement, is the fact that she had you know, had thumbs up, the fact that she had called in, you know, requesting more time to perform her duties as an armorer, and she specifically talked about safety issues, and that was denied. That's really good for the defense. Is that enough? I don't know. We'll have to, you know, watch as everything is progressing. You know, there's you know, there's the issue of maybe Seth Kinney brought those live rounds on set from a prior project. You know, if the defense can link that, see, this is the thing, is that now the defense has a pretty good opportunity of not only introducing their own theory, which they did in their opening statement, but now sort of fleshing that out with the evidence. The jury has these two competing theories. Number one, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed brought live rounds on set, and she was totally negligent in all of her job duties. And oh yeah, she was also doing drugs and alcohol while working. That's one theory. The other theory is there were all these other people that were responsible that are not taking any kind of blame, or not taking as much blame, or should be taking more blame. And then also, you know, there are other people that were, you know, creating this kind of situation that rendered her job impossible. Because the question is, was she criminally negligent? Did she take due care? Did she, you know, perform her responsibilities and keeping due care as what was required of her under the circumstances? That's a really tough question, but that's something that I can see the defense potentially getting there, depending on what the evidence says. So anyway, so yeah, it's the fact that other people were, so Jake, what I'm saying is, I agree with you in that the fact that there were other people that were doing a shitty job at their jobs does not automatically on its own remove her liability, remove her you know, culpability. But it could create a situation where it basically renders her unable to successfully perform her job entirely. And if she's the one that is trying to sound the alarm on safety and issues and things like that, and she's trying to do what she can to try to make things better, if there's evidence of that, then she may very well walk. Okay. I don't know if there are other questions. Let me see if I've got any other questions here. Nomad Purple asked this earlier. Does being special prosecutors mean they aren't used to this courtroom? I mean, probably. I don't know. I don't know what their experience is with this particular county itself, but I will say, even if it's your first time in a courtroom, you still have to get yourself familiarized with the tech in the courtroom, with what it is that you're dealing with, to try to make things as smooth as possible. Obviously, not everything is going to be within your control, because you have to be working with the court, but there's a number of ways that you can handle that to try to make things as smooth as possible. Hopefully these things smooth out as we go along, because we want this case to be tried on the evidence. We don't want this case to be tried on whether someone comes across as organized or not, whether the attorneys come across as organized or not. We really want the case to be about, was Hannah Gutierrez-Reed criminally negligent on October 21st, 2021? And, is there enough evidence of that? Has the state proved beyond, but yeah, it sucks to see like tech issues coming in and interfering with that kind of stuff too. So hopefully that smooths out. Just because is it helpful to show the full video, even when it is not necessarily the best for the witness? I mean, it really depends. A lot of fights will be had between the both sides about whether or not they can or should show an entire video, because sometimes cropping it takes out some context. Sometimes showing an entire video is just going to end up adding a lot of fluff that's not necessary. And it's going to use up court time. It's going to use up the jury's attention spans and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry to give you an answer of like, it depends. But it kind of depends. So yeah, let me see here. Harry Funmaker, if your job is impossible, do you have an expectation to quit? So that's another like really good point for the state, really, which is other people had quit. Other people had. So, that obviously was an option that some people were considering. Is, why didn't she quit if she found, safety issues? She was concerned about safety on the set. I don't know. The thing is, I don't think we're going to get an answer to that unless she testifies. And I mentioned this in my primer video. I don't think it's a good idea for her to testify at this point, based on what I know. I wouldn't advise her to, because it's not really necessary for her testimony. Maybe at some point, as the evidence gets presented, it starts to look like she kind of needs to testify. That can happen. But going into it, I don't expect her to testify. So other than that, I don't know that we're going to get an answer to that, as to like why she didn't quit if she saw these safety issues happening and she had a problem with them. Because like I said, other people had. Kurt Bradwell, that's garbage. We can't see the full video. Well, I think that this is to try to keep this from getting too sensationalized. Court TV, law and crime, the media in general, there's plenty of criticism to go around about how these live trials can be sensationalized sometimes. Like close-ups of victims and things like that. There's been a lot of criticism over the years of these kinds of things, and how these camera angles can really be manipulated in a lot of ways, and how it really just kind of not interferes with the process, but can make people who are already suffering very, very uncomfortable. And someone's final moments, that's obviously a very, very sensitive point. But sometimes we see remains in these trials because we've got an autopsy table and we've got a medical examiner who's testifying about it. I don't know. Carolyn V, can we re-poll now that we've heard opening statements? Okay, let's do this. Give me 1 second. We'll do a short poll. Okay. Okay. All right. Post openings, would you vote guilty or not guilty? So I've got guilty, not guilty, and refuse to conclude at this point, which any of those are entirely fair. At this point, I'm not going to judge anyone that is leaning towards prosecution, towards defense, or anyone who is just doesn't want to conclude at this point. Refuse to conclude. Sorry, not conclude. Stephen Yarger, does your mug say sumo wrestling? I don't read Japanese. I can't read Japanese, so I don't know, but it does have sumo wrestlers on it. I was handed this tea partway through. And it's delicious tea too. So probably. Okay. Let's see. Amanda, what are potential consequences if she's found guilty? Jail time, prison time. I've got to look up how many years that is the maximum. It's a short amount of time though, or it might actually be like 18 months for involuntary manslaughter. I remember it being like relatively small in comparison to like the fact that somebody died. So let's see. Coming in through, checking for more questions. Sion, why was she too lazy to check all the bullets? I mean, that's another question that needs to be answered. I mean, the prosecutor did say, like, look, she opened the chamber and kind of rolled it halfway and didn't take out the dummy rounds that had already been used, I guess. And just kind of like looked through it briefly and gave it over to David Halls. That's bad for the defense. That's bad for the defense. So there are points here so far in these opening statements that are good for the defense, bad for the defense. And I don't exactly know how it's going to come up. Was she getting pulled in another direction while she was doing this thing? It was somebody like yelling at her for spending time on her armorer duties in that moment while she's, because that could potentially give her a little bit of an out in that moment. Maybe not, but that's obviously a very crucial point to be paying attention to her job duties. That's still a question that is probably going to need to be answered at trial. Patrick Masters Productions. I can't believe the husband settled out and became executive producer, right? So that was part of the settlement, was that they made him a producer basically so that he can get a certain percentage of profit from the film, I suppose. And that was, I mean, from the perspective of Russ Productions, that was smart because it means that you kind of have him allying with Russ Productions to continue to have the movie made, right? So he's going to be then, he then has a vested interest in this movie actually getting made and getting produced, as opposed to being like, no, burn it all down. So like from their perspective, it was pretty smart. From his perspective, I don't know. I mean, I can't speculate as to like what his thought process was, but maybe he was just thinking about the fact that his wife was a very passionate cinematographer and this was her final project. And so like, yeah, I might as well, help to see this final project through. But yeah, that was surprising to me when I heard about it. So let's see here. Yeah, Arterison and the defense made a 2000% better case and much more sense. I agree. But we'll see what the evidence says. I mean, the opening statements are opening statements, but at the end of the day, the evidence is what the case is really going to be, what it's really going to be decided by. Joan, if they were dummy rounds, why would she need to check them though? Well, because they knew that live rounds and dummy rounds were both present on set. So they always need to be checked. I mean, even if they weren't 100% certain that live. I mean, sorry, let me put it this way. Even if they were certain that they were all dummy rounds, you still need to check the chamber just to make sure that everything is in there properly. Because why is the thumbs up there? So you still need to make sure that it's loaded in there properly, because even with a dummy round, if you've got some other fragments of something else in the chamber with it, I mean, folks that are just very well versed, I know some about firearms. I'm not a firearms expert, but my understanding is that even with a dummy round, something can go wrong if there's something else in the chamber with it, and that can become a projectile and can kill someone. So it's like even with a dummy round, you still should be checking it, because something could still be in there and fire out of the chamber with the dummy round and hurt someone. So yeah. Oh, Debbie Faye's on. I didn't know they were still going ahead with the movie. Yeah. Yep. I think they reshot like the rest of it. Living life with and singing songs with Mallory. Do we know what time trial will end each day? I'm guessing 4 or 5 p.m., but I don't know. Nomad Purple, they didn't know live rounds were on set. I thought they did. Yeah. DJ 637, beyond a reasonable doubt. I feel this will be hard to prove personally. Yeah, it could be. I mean, yeah. If there's any reasonable doubt, it's true. Like as to the live rounds being brought on set, there could very well be reasonable doubt as to Seth Kinney playing that role, and then also Sarah Zachary playing the role of picking up rounds from the ground. Oh, Arterison saying dummies do not go bang, blanks do. Okay. But I think they had blanks and they had dummies and they had live rounds on set. It was my understanding. And this is the other reason why they had Halyna Hutchins' estate become, or her husband become the one of the producers, because they probably figured that there would be people that would not want the movie to do well, and that would want to boycott. So once you learn, okay, but the family is also going to be profiting from it, I don't know, that might deflate some of the desires to boycott it. Flyers Gal 12, do you think the prosecution is trying to distance her from her stepdad by dropping the Reed from her name? I heard somebody saying that she doesn't go by Gutierrez-Reed normally, that she goes by Gutierrez. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, the jury's going to know. Well, they already do know at this point that Fel Reed is her dad or her stepdad. So yeah. Steven Yargo, did they answer why live rounds are on set, or trying to distract from answering that? I think they didn't exactly answer why they were on this set, but the defense opening statement could point to a reason why they might have been, which is training actors with live rounds can help them to understand how the recoil looks and feels on a gun, so that when you're shooting it without a live round, you can sort of mimic the movement and the feel of it in a scene, so that way it can look more real. Maybe that's why they had live rounds. I don't know. But hopefully we get an answer to that too. Let's see. Oh, Samaro, according to HDR, there were 0 live rounds on set as per police interviews. Well, then that's an inconsistency. Another reason for her maybe not to testify. A Scout and Bradley, thank you so much for the super chat. They had blanks and dummies on set. There was no reason to have live rounds. That's the problem. Okay. All right, guys. So we should have, let's see, she said 12:30. I think I'm probably going to, let's see here. Okay, we've got another 30 minutes. I'm going to pop off of this stream. This is going to redirect to the next stream, which will start as soon as we've got more testimony. So this will give all of us a little bit of a break in between. But let me first end this poll here. Post openings. Who would you vote? Or would you vote guilty or not guilty? So 51% now refuse to conclude at this point. So that was 60% before. Not guilty is 28% and guilty is 18%. So, all right. Cool. Thumbs up. Okay, guys. I think for me, that about does it for now. Like I said, yes, I did set it up. So this will redirect to the next live stream. And I am going to also change that from an unlisted link to a public link. I'm going to put some stuff out for it. And then I guess I'll see you guys back in the chat. Hopefully come on back and let's watch some more testimony. Hopefully they'll have these tech issues figured out. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for all of the commentary and everything that you guys have helped to contribute to the chat, or if you're just watching and lurking, listening in the background. If you guys can, if you haven't done so already, please do like the stream. It does help with the YouTube algorithm gods. And I hope to see you guys in the next stream for the afternoon session. All right, guys. See you in a bit.